So we're talking about settling the West, and in this instance, we're going to focus on what was going on with farmers. So we know that the railroad, Transcontinental Railroad, changed things dramatically. It allowed for movement of troops, settlers, mail, communications. But what it really focused on was the movement of crops. And because there was so much movement of crops, it changed the way farming was done in America forever. And a lot of the changes that occur at such a fast rate that farmers, in some ways, kind of get left in the dirt, so to speak, and are struggling to try and figure out how to adjust to this new and modern world. We know that farmers struggled because the Scarecrow needed a brain. That was the whole point of the Wizard of Oz. So, with apologies to the Native Americans who struggled probably more than anybody, let's talk about the struggles of the farmer. So, quick look, you've got some vocabulary that you can use for the bottom of your outline. You can pause this and match those up. And we're going to move on into the outline. So, one of the main things we talk about in terms of farming is the changes in technology, whether it's John Deere's tractor or Cyrus McCormick and his reaper. The mechanization of farms has occurred, which means fewer people can farm larger lands. We also had the steel plow, the use of steel as a new metal. We'll talk about this a bunch in Unit 7 with skyscrapers and bridges, etc. But steel is just a hardier metal, lasts longer, it's stronger, digs deeper. You've got steel windmills pumping water. The water in the plains is a lot deeper than a lot of places. These artesian wells have got to go deep to get them, and you need better digging to get there. You can see this windmill would work to generate water for this house continuously. And maybe the biggest technological change would be the refrigerated boxcar, allowing all kinds of crops, animals, etc. to be shipped large distances. You know, as the population is moving west, it's booming in the Northeast. The rapid urbanization of the cities can only occur if they're being fed. And they're being fed because refrigerated boxcars can bring food to them cheaply and fresh. The other thing that changes is farming becomes kind of a business. You know, for the small farmers, as overproduction increases with this mechanization of farming, when you know that anytime you overproduce something, prices go down. And so farmers, the smaller farmers, are going to be losing money. And as they're losing money, the only way for them to kind of catch up is to grow more crops. You know, if the value of the crop that I did last year was 500, and the value of the same crop this year is 400, the only way I get to 500 is to grow extra. Well, in order to grow extra, they need more land. In order to get more land, they got to go to the bank and get a loan. And so they go get loans, buy more lands, farm more crops. Farming more crops, prices go down, and they get stuck in this wicked cycle of overproduction, purchase of land, etc. And eventually it fails. It's going to start to lead to foreclosure as they lose these lands to bigger farms who could come in, these kind of business bonanza farms can come in and buy them out and increase production, etc. The other big issue that these small farmers were running into were railroads. The railroads were their lifeline. There's no reason to grow these big crops unless you can put them on a railroad and ship them. You can see that the railroad goes right through these farms. You got to get stuff to the railroads. All of these western towns, they've got big railroad junctions. And so in order for this to be productive for farmers, they got to be able to use the railroads. Well, the railroads know this. And so they extort them with really high rates. And these really high rates also help to drive these farmers out of business, because the big bonanza farms come in and they negotiate rebates, smaller prices with the railroads. And so it's kind of like the rich get richer and the poor lose everything. Now, we're now talking about, okay, so now that we've got problems for these farmers because of these great changes, now who's going to step in to help the farmers? And the first thing we want to talk about is government help. So one way the government helps is by opening land grant universities, meaning the government grants them land and money, and they open up colleges and universities to focus on farming and technology. You know, North Carolina Agricultural and Technology, North Carolina State University opened as a farming school. Virginia Tech is better known as Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. Texas Agricultural and Mechanical, all of these examples, Florida A&M, okay, etc., Alabama A&M, all these examples is the government stepping in saying, we'll spend money to help you learn to be better farmers. Better practices, better management of your money, better use of soil, etc. A lot of your historic black colleges, again, Alabama A&M, Florida A&M, Tuskegee University, were started as land grants to try and help people get an edge in terms of technology and farming. A little more confusing, got to really focus here, is how the Supreme Court attempted to help. We talk about two main Supreme Court cases, Munn, M-U-N-N, versus Illinois, and Wabash versus Illinois, both happening in Illinois in the Midwest. And in order to understand this, you need to make sure you recognize that some railroads are intra, I-N-T-R-A, state, meaning they only exist in that state. Most railroads, however, are interstate, meaning they cross state lines, like today's interstates, I-4 and I-75, etc. So when we talk about railroads, remember they were hurting the farmers. So the farmers took it to the courts. And in the Supreme Court case of Munn versus Illinois, the Supreme Court ruled that the states can control railroads that are intra-state. Well, in the state of Illinois, in the state of Iowa, etc., those state governments are run by people elected by farmers. That's the dominant people in those states. And so the governments are going to help the farmers. So Munn versus Illinois put money in the hands of the farmers. It helped the farmers. However, most railroads are interstate. And the farmers were bashed, Wabash versus Illinois. They were hurt in that Supreme Court case because there the Supreme Court ruled that interstate railroads are controlled by the Congress. And at this time, the Congress was controlled mostly by Republican big business supporters. The Northeast had industrialized rapidly, and as a result of that, it had a super high population with the urbanization that followed. And this high population gave them an electoral college advantage. And so the Republican Party dominated politics, dominated the Northeast, thus dominated the farmers. Even though the government tried to start something called the Interstate Commerce Commission to set just and reasonable rates for railroads, well, just the mere fact that the Congress was determining what a reasonable rate was tells you that it was going to be an advantage for the big business. As a result of this, you're going to have the rise of somebody else trying to help the farmers, the Populist Party, the People's Party, led by their candidate William Jennings Bryan, who gave his passionate, do not crucify these farmers on your cross of gold. You big business people who care too much about money, you need to take care of our farmers, of our people. And basically what the populists believed is it was up to the farmers to find ways to help themselves. The government was not going to help them. The biggest issue that you could see this arise is in something called bimetallism. You can see the picture on the top left. Bimetallism means use two metals in the money supply. For a long time, America's money supply had been backed only by gold, monometallism. Well, one of the problems you might remember the farmers had is they didn't have enough money. So if you don't have enough money to pay off the loans, etc., well, let's have a bigger money supply. Let's put more money in supply. And how do you do that? Well, we just discovered a buttload of silver out in the Comstock lode. So let's have two metals in our money supply, gold and silver. And so the bimetallism was one of the solutions the populists put forward as a way to expand the money supply and help farmers. This should remind you a little bit of a very famous part of The Wizard of Oz, an allegory written by Frank Lloyd Baum during the era of populism, in which he talked about the famous silver slippers. Now, most of you have probably seen The Wizard of Oz, and you recognize There ain't no such thing as silver slippers. They're ruby slippers. Well, that's because The Wizard of Oz was one of the first color movies made in America during the Depression. We'll talk about that in a later unit. And silver slippers don't look nearly as beautiful on screen as red slippers, ruby slippers. So they changed it. But that does tip us off to something that you might want to walk through. All of the ways that the Wizard of Oz is recognized as an allegory. For instance, the Wicked Witch of the East, killed by Dorothy. Well, what was the problem with the East? Well, the Lollipop Guild, the Munchkins, child labor. It's going to be a big problem with factories. We'll talk about that later. The Scarecrow, search of a brain, farmers needing help. Maybe the biggest of all is the idea of the yellow bricks. Oz is the way we measure gold, and you follow yellow bricks, gold bricks to the Emerald City. The Woodman, the Tin Man, needed a heart. So does industry in the East for all the terrible conditions the workers work under. The Cowardly Lion was William Jennings Bryan, our Cross of Gold speech guy, who's known for his fiery orations. He was a very, very loud talker, but not necessarily great with putting things into action. The Wizard, the man who hid behind the curtain and actually did nothing, was William McKinley, our Republican president, who didn't help Dorothy at all. Of course, the Yellow Brick Road, Dorothy's silver slippers. How does Dorothy win the day? How does she get home? She clicks her silver slippers together. This was a take by Frank Lloyd Baum that basically said, we need to put gold and silver into the money supply, bimetallism. Wicked Witch of the West was the train monopolist who controlled the farmers and hurt them with their extortion on the rates. Emerald City is Washington, D.C., a city where everything is made of green and people worship money. It's where the wizard lives. Winged monkeys were the Native Americans who had been hurt and taken off their land by the railroad. They were savages who became noble savages after Dorothy is able to use water in the West, rain, drought, anyone, to kill the witch. And as a last little indictment, opium dens were growing in America, and they were causing problems with drug use. And so the poppy field where Dorothy falls asleep was an indictment of that. Politically speaking, the populists come up with something called the Omaha platform. And these were the parts of their platform that stood out in terms of this is what we want our politicians to believe. A couple economic goals, first being bimetallism, which we've talked about, but they also got the 16th Amendment passed, the Progressive Income Tax Amendment. When you're 16, you can get a job, but you got to pay taxes. What progressive income tax means is the richer you are, the more taxes you pay. It progresses, it changes. And that helps the poor because they don't have to give the same amount as the rich. Some political reforms. First, the 17th Amendment said no longer are the state legislatures in blue going to choose senators, the most important part of the federal government. We're going to let the people directly elect senators. We're going to let it be popular sovereignty. Again, more power for the people. We're going to start using the secret ballot to protect them, especially for those folks in the South. And then we're going to use ideas like initiative, referendum, and recall. Those are ways in which people can directly affect the political process. Initiative is when citizens come up with an idea for a law. Referendum is when citizens vote on the law directly. And recall is when they take a bad politician and take him out of office. Now, the Omaha platform becomes very popular and very powerful, so much so that it actually becomes part of the Democratic Party platform. And whereas in this cartoon, it looks like William McKinley and the populists are swallowing the Democratic Party, it's the Democrats who end up coming out of this. The last way that we talk about farmers being helped is with cooperatives. Considered a union for farmers. They would all get together and go to the railroads at one time and say, listen, any one of us you forced to pay high rates, but if we all come together, you have to agree to our rate or else you get no business. The Grange was a very famous early cooperative that these farmers used to work together. But what you notice is that most of the help for the farmers is disappearing because, as you can see in the election of 1896, the Republicans won with a huge electoral advantage